I'm Jennifer Brooks, 22 years old, fresh out of UC Berkeley with an environmental science degree. My parents never supported my choices, never clapped for my wins, never cared about my dreams. Yet they threw this lavish family party in San Francisco, all glitz and glamour. Strange, right? Just last week they hissed that I was nothing but a leech, a dead weight dragging them down. Standing there watching the champagne bubbles rise in my glass, I caught my mom slipping something into my drink when she thought no one was looking. My heart pounded. Those weren't sugar cubes, they were sleeping pills meant to knock me out cold, maybe worse. At that family party, I saw her do it, her hands sneaky, her eyes darting. I stood up, forced a smile, my pulse racing, and made a split-second move that froze the room. One choice, one moment, and everything shifted. I knew if I didn't act fast, they'd get what they wanted: control over me, my future, everything I'd fought for. My hands trembled as I held that glass, their betrayal burning in my chest. I had to stay sharp, play it cool, or they'd spin this against me in a heartbeat. Before diving deeper into my story, I want to know what time you're listening and which city you're in. I'm thrilled to see how far this tale spreads. Share in the comments. To understand why my parents would go so far as to slip sleeping pills into my drink, you need to know about the Brooks family. We weren't the warm, fuzzy type you see in holiday commercials. My father, Robert Brooks, built Brooks Energy from a small research lab into a billion-dollar empire, branding it as a leader in renewable energy. But behind the green slogans, he was ruthless. Competitors vanished, funding dried up, permits stalled. Whispers in the industry called it sabotage, though he played the eco-warrior philanthropist in public. My mother, Susan Brooks, came from old San Francisco money, her family tied to real estate fortunes. She was obsessed with the Brooks image. Our Pacific Heights mansion graced lifestyle magazines, and her charity galas were the talk of the Bay Area elite. But at home, she was icy, always calculating, picking apart my every flaw. Then there was my sister Jessica Brooks, 3 years older, the golden child. Straight A student captain of the debate team, graduated from Columbia with honors, and joined the family company as a marketing star. Her trophies lined our hallways: tennis medals, academic plaques, even her high school art awards. My parents never missed her events, beaming at every speech or showcase. My experience completely different. I was a straight A student too, but my awards got a shrug. "That's just expected," my father would mutter, eyes glued to his tablet. When I won a regional science fair in sophomore year, my mother only remarked that my presentation slides looked sloppy. They showed up to my events only when skipping would have raised eyebrows. From childhood, they had my life mapped out. I'd study energy engineering, join Brooks Energy, and run their research division, while Jessica handled branding. My dreams didn't matter. In high school, I got hooked on environmental science, specifically how industrial runoff, like chemicals from energy labs, poisoned waterways like the San Francisco Bay. My father scoffed, calling it hippie nonsense. My mother said it was beneath the Brooks legacy. When I applied to UC Berkeley for environmental science, all hell broke loose. My father slammed his fist, threatening to cut me off financially. My mother wept about family duty, saying I was betraying our name. I argued I could make a difference without their blueprint, but after weeks of cold silence, I compromised, minoring in energy science and working summer internships at their company. College gave me some freedom, but the pressure never stopped. Every holiday I faced snide comments about my little phase and how I'd come around to their plan. They emailed job listings for Brooks Energy's research team, ignoring my applications to environmental nonprofits. When I landed an internship with a Bay Area group studying water pollution, they threatened to stop paying my tuition. I took out loans for my final year rather than cave. What they didn't know was that my maternal grandmother, Grandma Margaret, had left me a trust fund, $12 million accessible when I turned 23, or graduated, whichever came last. Grandma Margaret was my only real ally. A brilliant chemist, she'd been forced to play second fiddle to her husband's career. Before she passed, when I was 16, she made me promise to chase my own path. She'd seen how my parents controlled us, especially after they tried to push Jessica into an arranged engagement with a rival CEO's son for a business merger. Jessica dodged it, but it left scars. Grandma's trust was her way of giving me freedom set up with independent trustees, so my parents couldn't touch it. 3 months before my graduation, their lawyer Christopher Lane let slip about the trust during a board meeting. Jessica later told me our father's face went red with fury. That money meant I'd be independent beyond their grip. Worse, if I didn't graduate or didn't make it to 23, the trust would revert to them as next of kin. That's when their behavior shifted. The constant texts about job interviews stopped. Instead, they got oddly invested in my graduation plans. My mother called all syrupy, saying they wanted to throw a proper family party to celebrate our Jennifer. It was so unlike them. Lavish gestures weren't their style, not for me. The shift felt wrong, like a trap snapping shut. I started digging, finding Grandma's old journal among my things. Her final entry, written in shaky handwriting, warned about the Brooks family's toxic ambitions and urged me to break free before it's too late. My stomach knotted. She'd known something was off even back then. Now, standing in that party watching my mother tamper with my drink, I realized how far they'd go to keep me under their thumb and how much they feared what I might uncover about their company's secrets. College was supposed to be my escape, but my parents never let up. They kept pushing me to join Brooks Energy, flooding my inbox with job descriptions for their research division positions I had zero interest in. I'd send back polite rejections, saying I wanted to focus on environmental science, on cleaning up messes like the chemical runoff poisoning the San Francisco Bay. Their replies were sharp, laced with disappointment. "You're wasting your potential," my father snapped during one tense dinner. My mother just sighed, muttering about family legacy. When I landed a summer internship with a nonprofit tracking water pollution, they hit the roof. My father threatened to cut off my tuition, his voice cold as steel. "You'll learn the hard way, Jennifer," he said. My mother chimed in. "You're throwing away everything we've built for you." I stood my ground, taking out loans to cover my final year at UC Berkeley. I wasn't going to let them dictate my life. The tension wasn't new, but it got worse after they learned about Grandma Margaret's trust, $12 million that would give me freedom when I turned 23 or graduated. My sister Jessica pulled me aside one evening at our parents' Pacific Heights mansion. They found out about the trust 3 months ago. She whispered, her eyes uneasy. Christopher Lane mentioned it during a board meeting. Father was furious, said it'd ruin everything. I pressed her for details. She hesitated, then admitted she'd overheard our parents arguing about it later. If I didn't make it to graduation or died before the trust kicked in, the money would go to them. Jessica's voice shook as she added, "They've been acting strange ever since Jennifer. Be careful." Her warning stuck with me, especially because she'd never questioned our parents before. She was their star, but I could tell something was shifting. She was starting to see cracks in their perfect image. That's when their behavior changed. The constant emails about Brooks Energy jobs stopped. No more passive-aggressive jabs about my phase. Instead, my mother called out of the blue, her voice dripping with fake warmth. "We're throwing you a family party," she said, "to celebrate your graduation. It's only right for a Brooks." It didn't add up. They'd never cared about my milestones before. Why, now I dug through Grandma's journal again, her words haunting me. "The Brooks family will do anything to protect their empire." My gut told me this party was a setup, but I had no proof. Not yet. The morning of the party, a perfect May day in San Francisco, I stood in my apartment, nerves buzzing as I adjusted my dress. My phone pinged with a text from my mother, car service at 9:30. "Don't be late. I met my parents outside the Fairmont, San Francisco, where they'd booked the rooftop for the event." My father was glued to his phone, probably checking stock prices for Brooks Energy. My mother scanned me head to toe, her lips pursing. "Couldn't you have done something with your hair?" she said. "No trace of congratulations." Jessica stood nearby, giving me a small, strained smile like she knew something was off, but couldn't say it. My friends Samantha and Heather rushed over, their excitement cutting through the tension. "You made it through Berkeley." Samantha hugged me, whispering, "Your parents still act like you're a disappointment." Heather nodded. "Some things never change." I forced a laugh, but my eyes caught my parents stepping aside, their heads bent together in a hushed, intense exchange. I couldn't catch much, but my father's voice carried, "We need to handle this today, Susan, before it's out of our control." My mother nodded, her face tight, then spotted me watching. She flashed a practiced smile, all teeth and no warmth. "Darling, let's get inside. The guests are arriving." My stomach twisted. Their words echoed Grandma's warning, and Jessica's unease from weeks earlier replayed in my head. I needed answers. Before the party started, I slipped away to a quiet corner near the service entrance, pretending to check my phone. That's when I heard them again, my parents arguing in low, angry whispers behind a partition. "Is this really necessary?" My mother hissed, her voice sharp with nerves. "We could just talk to her, Robert." My father's reply was venomous. "Talk. She's stubborn as hell, Susan. The EPA's sniffing around our West facility. Those water samples could sink us. If she goes public with her environmental crusade, we're done. The trust makes her untouchable. $12 million and she's out of our reach." My mother's voice dropped lower. "But slipping pills in her drink? At her own party?" My father cut her off. "It's just enough to make her sick, knock her out for a few days. Food poisoning, that's what it'll look like. We'll handle the trust paperwork before it transfers next week. If she's out of the picture, the money's ours." My blood ran cold. I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles whitened, barely breathing as I recorded their words through the partition, thanks to a tip from my boyfriend James, who taught me how to use the app discreetly. They were planning to drug me, not to kill, but to hospitalize me long enough to steal my inheritance and bury their company's crimes. The Brooks empire was built on lies, and I was the one thing standing in their way. The Fairmont San Francisco's rooftop was a spectacle, ice sculptures dripping in the May heat, champagne fountains sparkling under chandeliers, gourmet stations piled with food, and a string quartet humming in the corner. Guests mingled their laughter loud, half of them strangers to me, business associates, not family friends. I stood by a table, my stomach still churning from what I'd overheard in the service corridor. My parents' plan to slip sleeping pills into my drink to make me sick enough to miss the trust deadline and bury their company's secrets felt like a blade in my chest. I scanned the crowd, spotting my father Robert shaking hands with men in tailored suits. His smile all business. My mother, Susan, glided through the room playing the perfect hostess while my sister Jessica lingered near the bar, her eyes darting nervously. Professor Daniel, my advisor from UC Berkeley, approached with a glass of water. "Quite the show your parents put on," he said, his tone warm but cautious. "Congratulations, Jennifer. You've earned this." I forced a smile. "It's a bit much for them, don't you think?" "Not their usual style." He nodded, glancing at my father. "Those are board members from Brooks Energy," he murmured. "I hear the EPA's been circling their West facility lately. Rumors of water contamination. Be careful, they're on edge." His words hit like a warning shot, echoing what I'd heard about the polluted bay. I thanked him, my mind racing as I caught my parents watching me, not with pride, but with a cold, calculating stare that made my skin crawl. Jessica sidled up, her voice low. "Something's not right, Jennifer. Father asked me twice if you'd mentioned your plans after graduation. Mother keeps checking her phone like she's waiting for a signal." Before I could respond, my father raised his glass. The room quieting. "In 15 minutes, we'll toast to the family," he announced, his businessman grin plastered on. "Everyone grab a champagne flute." Waiters moved in, arranging trays of glasses. I watched my father point to a specific bottle with a silver label. "That one," he said sharply to a waiter. "For the family only." I excused myself, heart pounding, and slipped toward the employee restroom to clear my head. Near the service door, I heard their voices again, my parents arguing in hushed tones. "Are you sure about this, Robert?" My mother whispered, her voice tight. "It's risky." My father's tone was ice. "The EPA's closing in, Susan. If she starts digging into the bay pollution, we're finished. Those pills will put her in the hospital for a few days, long enough to lock down the trust. It'll look like a bad stomach bug, nothing more." My mother hesitated, but at her own party, he snapped back. "Keep your voice down. We can't let $12 million slip away." I pressed myself against the wall, my phone already recording thanks to James, my boyfriend, who'd shown me how to capture audio discreetly. Their words confirmed it. They'd do anything to stop me. Back in the main room, I forced my face into a calm mask, years of dodging their manipulation kicking in. Waiters arranged champagne flutes on a silver tray, my father hovering nearby inspecting each glass. He picked one, setting it slightly apart, his movements deliberate. I spotted James across the room, giving him a subtle nod to start recording on his phone. My friends Samantha and Heather stood nearby, chatting about our post-graduation plans, sharing an apartment, starting our careers. I pulled them aside, my voice steady despite the panic clawing at me. "I need a favor." "No questions," I whispered. "Samantha, keep your phone ready to record the toast. Make sure you get my father in the frame when he hands out the glasses." Samantha nodded, loyal as always. "You okay?" Heather asked, her brow creasing. "Just family stuff," I said, forcing a smile. "You know how it is." The minutes dragged like hours. My environmental science training kicked in, analyzing what those pills could be. Something subtle, mimicking food poisoning, likely from Brooks Energy's research labs, hard to trace. Nausea, dizziness, maybe a racing pulse. If it hit, I'd need to act fast, tell the paramedics what to check. My father called everyone together, his voice booming. Time for the family toast. He grabbed the silver label bottle, pouring into the flutes himself, ensuring the marked glass stayed separate. He handed one to my mother, then Jessica, and finally approached me, his eyes locking onto mine with a smile that didn't reach them. To Jennifer, he said loudly, pressing the glass into my hand, its base slightly cloudy with undissolved powder. My mother stepped in smoothly. "Robert, say a few words about our daughter." He cleared his throat, slipping into his CEO charm. "Jennifer's always been determined," he began, his words dripping with hidden disdain only I could hear. "She's chosen her own path, and today we celebrate her milestone." The guests clapped, oblivious. My mind spun. That glass in my hand was a ticking bomb. Samantha was recording, her phone angled discreetly. I needed evidence. Refusing the drink would just give them another chance later. I had to act now. "Before we toast," I said, stepping forward with a bright smile, "I want to honor my sister Jessica. She's been the family's shining star, and I wouldn't be here without her." I turned to her, raising my glass. "This champagne's too good not to share, sis. Take mine." Before anyone could react, I pressed my untouched flute into Jessica's hand smoothly, taking hers, all ready, sipped safe. My father's face froze, his eyes wide with suppressed panic. My mother's grip tightened on her glass, her smile cracking. Jessica looked confused, but smiled back, social habit taking over. "To family," I said, raising her safe glass, staring straight at my father. "To family," Jessica echoed, drinking deeply from the tainted flute. The room cheered, glasses clinking, but my father's face was ashen, sweat beading on his brow. My mother darted glances between him and Jessica, her composure fraying. I sipped Jessica's glass, holding my father's gaze, my heart pounding but my expression steady. The quartet played on, guests oblivious. Guilt twisted in my gut. I'd let my sister drink something meant for me. They'd said it wouldn't kill, just sicken. But what if they'd lied? 30 minutes later, it hit. Jessica was chatting with a guest when she stumbled, pressing a hand to her forehead. "I feel dizzy," she mumbled, her voice slurring. She swayed, collapsing into the guest's arms. "Help," he shouted. "Something's wrong." My parents rushed over their panic reel now that their golden child was hit. My father knelt beside her, his hands shaking. "Call an ambulance!" My mother screamed, her poise gone. Professor Daniel pushed through, checking her pulse. "Her heart's racing," he said, loosening her scarf. The room buzzed with chaos, guests whispering. My father's eyes snapped to mine, fury mixing with fear. I stared back, unflinching. "Stay with her," I told my parents, my voice firm. "I'll guide the paramedics." As I moved toward the exit, I called Samantha. "Meet me downstairs now," I said. "Bring the video. It's an emergency." The ambulance screeched through San Francisco streets, sirens blaring as I followed in a cab with James, my heart pounding with guilt and fear. Jessica was in there, fighting the effects of the sleeping pills meant for me. At NYU Langone Hospital, chaos greeted us. Nurses rushed Jessica into the emergency room, her face pale, her breathing uneven. My parents were already there, my mother sobbing loudly to anyone who'd listen. My daughter just collapsed. No reason, my father stood rigid, his eyes darting to me, a mix of panic and rage. I ignored them, pushing through to the nurse's station. "I need to speak to the doctor now," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "I'm an environmental science graduate, and I think my sister ingested something dangerous in her champagne." The nurse raised an eyebrow but nodded, calling Dr. Thomas, the emergency physician. I turned to Samantha, who'd arrived with Heather clutching her phone. "Did you get the video?" I whispered. She nodded, eyes wide. "It's all there, your father handing you the glass, the switch, everything. I sent a copy to your email." I exhaled, relieved. That video was my lifeline. Dr. Thomas approached, his face serious. "Your sister's showing signs of anticholinergic effects. Dizziness, confusion, elevated heart rate," he said. "We're running toxicology screens. What makes you suspect foul play?" I took a deep breath. I believe my parents put a compound from Brooks Energy's labs in my drink, but Jessica drank it instead. Test for experimental sedatives, ones not on standard screens. His eyes narrowed, but he picked up the phone to alert the lab. My parents hovered nearby, my mother's sobs growing theatrical, my father gripping his phone like a weapon. I pulled James aside. "Send the video to the police when they get here," I said. "Tell them everything you saw." He squeezed my hand, his voice low. "I've got you, Jen." Minutes later, Detective Matthew arrived, a no-nonsense cop with sharp eyes. "Walk me through it," he said, notebook ready. I recounted the overheard conversation at the party, my father's careful selection of the tainted glass, and my split-second decision to switch with Jessica. "I didn't think it was lethal," I said, my voice shaking. "I just needed proof. I'm so sorry she's suffering." He scribbled, his expression unreadable. "And why would they do this?" I swallowed hard. "Money. Control. My grandmother left me a trust, $12 million that activates next week. If I'm out of the picture, it goes to them. Plus, they're hiding something about their company pollution in the San Francisco Bay." Before he could respond, my mother stormed over, mascara streaking. "This is absurd," she cried. "Jennifer's always been jealous of Jessica, making up lies to tear us apart." My father joined her, his voice low and dangerous. "She's unstable, Detective. She's been resentful of our expectations for years." Christopher Lane, their lawyer, appeared, placing a hand on my father's arm. "My clients have no comment," he said smoothly. "Any questions go through me." Detective Matthew raised an eyebrow. "We have a video, Mr. Lane. It shows your client handing Jennifer a specific glass and her switching it with Jessica's." My father's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. An hour later, Dr. Thomas returned with a tablet. "Toxicology found a modified sedative, a research compound from Brooks Energy's labs," he said. "It's not commercially available, only someone with access to their facilities could get it. We're giving her physostigmine to counter it. She's stable, but it was close." Relief flooded me, but guilt lingered. Jessica could have been hurt worse. I asked to see her. In her hospital room, she lay connected to monitors, looking fragile but awake. "Jen," she whispered, her voice raspy. "They told me Did our parents really try to drug you? I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. I'm so sorry, sis. I switched the glasses to get evidence. I didn't know what else to do. Her hand squeezed mine weakly. I saw reports at work, she said, her eyes hardening. Sealed files about chemical dumping in the bay. Heavy metals, toxic sludge. I didn't connect the dots until now. Before I could respond, Agent Tyler from the FBI entered, his badge glinting. Miss Brooks, we've been investigating Brooks Energy for 6 months. Fraud, environmental violations, falsified safety data, he said. Your sister's incident gave us cause to move faster. We executed search warrants on your parents' offices and home an hour ago. Jessica's monitors beeped as her heart rate spiked. I signed some of those papers, she said, her voice breaking. They told me it was routine compliance. Agent Tyler nodded. We'll need your statement later. For now, rest. As he left, Jessica turned to me, tears streaming. I trusted them blindly. Defended them when you said they were controlling. And they did this. I held her hand tightly. They manipulated us both, Jess. But we're done being their pawns. The hospital room became a hub of activity. Detective Matthew separated my parents for questioning my mother's protests echoing down the hall. My father demanded Christopher Lane, his voice icy. I sat with Jessica, our hands still clasped, a new bond forming through shared betrayal. Hours later, Agent Tyler returned with a folder. We found something in your parents' home, he said, holding up a small leather journal. It's your grandmother's. Recognize it? I opened it. My breath catching. Grandma Margaret's handwriting detailed her suspicions about Brooks Energy's early pollution, decades-old records of chemical dumping she'd tried to expose. Her final entry read, Jennifer has the strength to end this family's lies. I trust her to do what I couldn't. The San Francisco Chronicle broke the story 2 days later. Energy CEO and wife arrested for attempted drugging of daughter. Smaller headlines screamed FBI uncovers fraud and toxic dumping at Brooks Energy. Our family name, once a symbol of wealth, became synonymous with greed and betrayal. At the preliminary hearing weeks later, the courtroom was packed. My parents sat at the defense table dressed impeccably despite detention. My mother's eyes welled when she saw Jessica, but my father stared ahead, refusing to look at us. The prosecution played Samantha's video clear as day, my father handing me the tainted glass, my switch with Jessica. Toxicology reports matched the compound to Brooks Energy's labs. Financial records showed the trust motive, and FBI evidence revealed years of illegal dumping that poisoned Bay Area communities linked to rising cancer rates. When the judge ruled there was enough evidence for trial, including attempted harm and environmental crimes, my mother collapsed in sobs. My father's face stayed stone cold, his jaw clenched. Outside, reporters swarmed. Jessica grabbed my hand, stepping forward with fire in her eyes. My sister saved my life, she said, her voice steady. Our parents tried to drug her to steal her inheritance and hide their crimes. They're the ones who betrayed this family, not us. The crowd fell silent, cameras flashing. I squeezed her hand, my heart swelling. We were no longer their perfect daughter and their disappointment. We were survivors standing together against their lies. The fallout came fast. My parents took plea deals, 20 years for my father Robert on charges of attempted harm and environmental violations, 15 for my mother Susan after she agreed to testify about Brooks Energy's fraud. The judge called them flight risks, citing offshore accounts they'd siphoned funds into for years. Their empire crumbled overnight. The FBI's search warrants uncovered damning evidence, emails detailing falsified safety reports, records of chemical dumping into the San Francisco Bay, linked to cancer spikes in nearby communities. My parents' names, once plastered on charity banners, became shorthand for corporate greed and family betrayal. Jessica and I hired our own lawyer, a sharp woman named Ellen Carter, to untangle our ties to Brooks Energy. Your grandmother's trust is secure, she told us in her San Francisco office. The trustees expedited the transfer given the circumstances. The $12 million was mine, but I didn't want their tainted legacy. We sold their Pacific Heights mansion and personal assets, directing every cent to a victim compensation fund for communities poisoned by the bay's contamination. Cleanup costs topped $100 million, but it was a start. I used part of my trust to establish a foundation focused on water quality testing and healthcare for affected families. It couldn't erase the damage, but it felt like a step toward justice. Jessica resigned from Brooks Energy the day she left the hospital. I can't be part of their lies anymore, she told me, her voice firm, despite the shadows under her eyes. She enrolled in law school at UCLA, specializing in environmental law, driven to hold companies like our parents accountable. I moved to a small house on a lake in Northern California, a property Grandma Margaret had left me, where we'd spent summers as kids, free from our parents' control. The quiet there was healing, a stark contrast to the cold perfection of our old mansion. Jessica joined me a month later, selling her downtown condo, too haunted by memories of family dinners and fake smiles. Walking through the lake house one November morning, 7 months after that fateful party, I found another of Grandma's journals in a dusty box. Her words hit hard. The Brooks family poisons everything water trusts love. Jennifer break their cycle. She'd seen their corruption decades ago and trusted me to end it. Jessica read it over my shoulder, her hand on mine. You did what she wanted, she said softly. We both did. That moment solidified our bond, not just as sisters, but as survivors who'd chosen truth over loyalty to a toxic name. We cut all ties with our parents. No visits, no letters, no inheritance. Their lawyers tried reaching out, offering apologies that rang hollow. We refused to hear them. They'd tried to drug me, destroy Jessica, and poison entire communities for profit. There was no forgiveness. No reconciliation, only a clean break. I started a job with an environmental firm in California, using my degree to clean up industrial pollution, turning Brooks Energy's damage into something reparable. Jessica threw herself into her studies, her old perfectionist drive now fueled by purpose, not parental approval. Standing on the lake house porch one evening, watching the sunset ripple across the water, I reflected on what we'd lost and gained. The Brooks name was dead to us, but we'd found something better, a family built on trust, not blood. Samantha, Heather, James, and Professor Daniel had stood by us, my chosen family, through every step. I'd learned a hard truth. Blood doesn't guarantee love or loyalty. My parents saw me as a threat to control, a leech to eliminate, but their betrayal taught me to spot manipulation early, to recognize the signs of a toxic family and walk away. That's the lesson I want you to take from this. Don't let greed or control blind you. Choose justice, choose independence, and choose people who lift you up. If you're stuck in a toxic situation, reach out to friends, to professionals, to anyone who'll listen. You don't have to face it alone. My grandmother's trust gave me freedom, but her real gift was believing I could break free from the Brooks poison. That faith carried me through, and it's shaping my future now. I'm building a life rooted in truth, not lies, and I hope my story reminds you that you can too. Thank you for listening to my journey. If it resonated, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of survival and strength. Drop a comment below, share your own experiences or thoughts. What's helped you break free from toxic ties? Let's keep this conversation going.